here in Muskegon, we took some pretty decisive action during COVID, some of which became quite controversial. As you'll remember, I'm sure you saw the gift card saga play out in the news and in the media. Um, Interesting factoid that nationwide, 1 in 6 restaurants have permanently closed due to COVID. Anticipated that that will go up before this is all over. We have lost exactly 1 restaurant in the city limits. So, that program got us a lot of heartburn, and we had some folks that weren't too happy about it. But at the same time, we do attribute some of that upfront capital, and we've had restaurant owners tell us that, that helped stabilize things. Additionally, the Michigan Municipal Executives Association actually gave the city of Muskegon an innovation award, statewide innovation award for that gift card program that we just received recently. So, as to the lay of the land in the retail and restaurant space, we're not suffering quite as bad as some of our neighbors are in West Michigan due to some of our early programming, and then, quite frankly, some of the favorable banking environment that was here in Muskegon County before COVID hit. So, Muskegon County banks, and I don't know if this was your guys' experience in the property game, but in Muskegon County banks, when it came to retail and hospitality, they were a lot more amenable to continuing to lend and continuing lines of credit. They didn't place moratoriums as quickly as a lot of other banks did. So um, that did help quite a bit. And so most of our restaurants and retail and hospitality have gotten through okay. We're still down a couple thousand positions in the city limits, which is not a good thing, but we try to track those numbers with the best data that we can access, and some of which we pay for. Um, and what we're seeing is that manufacturing recovered really, really quickly, which is important to you guys because I'm sure a lot of your rental units have those folks that hold those base jobs, those healthcare and manufacturing jobs. Between healthcare and manufacturing in the city limits, it comprises just under 50% of all jobs in the city. So it's our main 2 sectors are still healthcare and manufacturing, and then the rest is service industry, retail, and other information sectors. So but a lot of your middle income earners that are renting are filling those baseline healthcare and manufacturing jobs. Both of those sectors have recovered really well. We're not that shy of pre-COVID numbers, which is good. So that's good news. And currently, there's a lot of folks hiring. So if you have tenants that you're working with that have arrearages and they're looking for work, don't hesitate to direct them to our page or the Michigan Works page because most of those are quite current. And you are seeing a lot of folks that are hiring for most shifts. So that's good news. Um, as to the investment economy, which I think is probably what most of you want to hear mostly about, what's going on right now. As you'll know, there's historically low inventory in homes for sale in the single family and multifamily space as far as availability. The city has actually taken on a pretty aggressive program of constructing infill housing on our own. I'm sure as you go through Nelson and McLaughlin neighborhoods, you'll see some of the stuff that we're building. Over the course of the next several years, I think we have a plan to put about 65 units online in Jackson Hill, McLaughlin, Nelson, and potentially Angel neighborhood as well. So that's not including some sites we have available for multifamily that could be a rehab or new construction, to Mr. Benedict's point. So, what we're looking for right now, in 2019, my department led a housing study that specifically focused on multifamily rentals um, and looked at complexes that were over 12 units and in the city limits. So we looked at a bunch of different stuff, basically trying to answer a couple questions. One, are we meeting the multifamily housing need in Mesquite in the city limits right now? And two, are we experiencing gentrification events? So as everybody knows, we're putting a lot of new what we call PMR or premium market rate units in downtown, primarily on Western Avenue or just off Western Avenue. So you've got all these nice new mixed use buildings coming online with not lots of high end apartments, right? So, as an example, in 2018, some of those apartments came online at about $1.48 a square foot. They're currently renewing at around $1.70 a square foot, and we some of the new apartments that are going to be coming online right now that are going to be our pre-construction or going to be entering construction are more in the $2 a square foot range. So we're seeing those rents on those downtown apartments escalate very quickly. We anticipate an 8 to 10% increase in those rents over the next several years annually. And people will pay it. So, what we tried to determine is, okay, are we pushing anybody out? Are we discounting folks? Are we not providing housing stock for others in the market? Found a few things out with that study. One, multifamily rates, when subsidized, we're just under the single family rent, the average single family detached rent that you guys are charging for your portfolios. So people could get away a little bit cheaper in an apartment if they were eligible for LIHTC or Section 8 or things of that nature. And then what the other thing we found out is we do have, Muskegon sort of has this reputation of having all the low income housing, quote unquote, in the area, us in Muskegon Heights. And what we've determined is while we do have a large stock of low income multifamily housing, either through LIHTC, Section 8, public voucher, so on and so forth, of those units, 89% of those units are actually reserved for seniors. And so we're either reserved or senior preferred. And that was pretty alarming. We didn't understand that when we started that study. So that kind of led us to two things. One, what we noticed is that while we are building new premium market rate, it only makes up 4% of the total available multifamily units in all of the city's limits. So there's a lot of capacity for additional market there. And then that's evidenced by the fact that people are paying higher and higher rents. The other thing that we noticed is we have a huge gap in the multifamily space for workforce housing. So what we call workforce housing is those folks that are anywhere from around 60 all the way up to 120% of the area median income, two $11 an hour incomes in one house, one 15, 16, $17 an hour income in a house. Those folks that we call Alice families, are people familiar with the term Alice families? I'm going to look for nodding or shaking heads. Okay, so I'm seeing shaking heads. So Alice family, Alice is an acronym. It stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, and Employed. So what we call, candidly, a lot of the renters in Muskegon are Alice families. So they do work. They work low to very medium wage jobs, and they have limited assets. They don't own things. They don't build credit. So those are folks that we call Alice families, and those are the folks that we're really targeting to build additional housing because the private market has kind of moved towards new family construction in the premium market rate market. We continue to work with those developers. So we're really right now focused on folks that can build infill housing in the single family and multifamily market that can either be price pointed for sale through incentives with us at a lower price point. Community and Compass was just on the line. We're actually doing a partnership with them that I'll get into in a little detail. Or folks that want to construct buy and hold investment portfolio rentals, multiplex rentals. They can be varying sizes and layouts. So we like to see apartments. We like density. We like to see apartments. We're open to townhomes, row homes, duplexes, quadplexes, other creative designs. But we want to see folks that are going to make those investments in those areas and either partner with a LIHTC developer or work on, through the brownfield incentives we offer to keep their rents throttled in certain points. So we're really looking for those people. We're looking for market rate people, and we're looking for people that know how to build and operate workforce housing. So that's kind of what we're seeing in the market. I think all you guys probably know, partially because of the eviction moratorium, but also even pre-COVID, occupancy rates were quite high. I'm not sure how you guys were all doing personally, but a lot of the people we were caucusing were, 90+% occupancy for their units pretty much all the time. We were anecdotally finding employees of ours that were having trouble finding rental properties, in the city limits. Because a lot of times, depending on the work unit here, the city, if you live in the city limits, you actually get a residency bonus in your salary. So we do that to encourage public servants to live in the city. And so, we had folks that wanted to do that to take advantage of the bonus, and then they couldn't find rental housing. So we anticipate that market will continue to be strong. We know that there's a significant bubble with arrearages going on. We're hoping that the state comes through with some of that, as Michael was discussing, and then obviously the bill that's currently moving through the federal government that's got some additional opportunities there as well. So that's kind of my take on the investment landscape, and then the employment landscape for the folks that are really the people that you rely on for tenants and their finances, which are important. At that point, is there something else, Gary, that you wanted me to cover this evening? I can talk about all the developments going on as well if you want me to get into detail.
Yeah, details about what developments are going on, where they're at. Sure. Also, I know that the city has a very targeted game plan, which I like, where they're targeting certain areas and hoping that the private sector coalesces around that. So just, give us that viewpoint, where should we be looking? What are you guys doing? What do we not know about that's coming online soon?
For sure. So I'll go through right now just to kind of put a cap on the single family stuff. We have several different developers that we're working with right now. The preeminent one, his name is Dave Dusendang. Some of you may know him. He is constructing right now. I think he's in the process of 16 homes for us, and he is primarily in the Nelson neighborhood. So Nelson encompasses downtown, as most of you know. The theory here has always been, we need to rebuild the core of the city. We need to rebuild downtown and its commercial offerings and residential offerings, and then branch out from there as we go. And we're finally seeing like the private market really is starting to take things over as commercial units become available. They're pretty much being bought. Like as an example, the bank right down the street from City Hall here just recently closed its branch, and we already have a developer that's purchasing that entire lot. So, and that was less than 30 days. So, 6 years ago, downtown Muskegon, that was not the case. We would continue to, try to find ways to subsidize things and get people to quote unquote take a chance on us. Now that that market has been proven, we're starting to do the second phase where we're branching out into other core neighborhoods. So you're seeing us start to target lots in McLaughlin. I myself am leading some projects in Jackson Hill to get things going over there. And then you'll see us starting to move across Laketon into Angel. Potentially, we're doing some parks and rec improvements to Campbell Field and trying to identify lots there that we want investors to target. So you're starting to see that second phase where we're really starting to branch out into single family stuff. But there are roughly 800 vacant lots in the city limits that formerly had some iteration of single family home on them. And so our goal, and we're not as married to single family detached. We're looking at row home options. We're looking at condominiumized options. And we're even open to people building and holding rentals. It's just we want to infill the housing stock so that we can kind of increase the population base that was once here. A lot of people don't realize Muskegon city limits used to hold just under 50,000 people, and it's now just under 40,000 people. So, we're about 10,000 people, or 20% short of our peak population. So the goal is to build that up so that we can provide better public services and a better environment for people over the course of time. So that's kind of the single family stuff. When you're talking about where to focus, one thing that nobody has quite been able to crack yet, I've walked quite a few people through it, but if you have investors that are brave and are looking to move to that next step of development, the Frebel School building in the Marquette Jackson Hill area, that was a former public elementary school with Muskegon Public Schools, and the city owns that. And we've had a few people walk through it, and nobody's quite pulled the trigger yet. But we are open to either workforce housing or market rate apartments at that site. The site also comes with pretty much the rest of a city block, nearly a block and a half, that could be developed into single family detached, centered around the complex. Or it could be row homes, townhomes, duplexes. It's got a lot of potential, and we know that it's a clean site. That the city's actively seeking someone to take a look at that site. So if anybody wants to tour that, I am going to put my email in the chat here at the end. That is a big project. That's for somebody that's really looking to scale. But yeah, it's a good opportunity. So Jackson Hill is big. I'm actually currently working with some local contractors, Rudy and Greg Briggs, and they are constructing homes and some city-owned lots. I think we have about 11 lots targeted over the next 4 years. They're building the first two right now on Leonard Street near Leonard and Getty, which is actually a nice little wooded lot area. Kind of butts right up to a downhill that goes down into Ryerson Creek. So that's a nice little spot. So we are kind of starting to branch into other neighborhoods, as I mentioned. The primary stuff you're going to see, where you're seeing multiple homes being built at once, is still in Nelson, but we're infilling that over the next 2 years, where you'll see us moving across Laketon. You'll see us moving past the high school down Peck and Sanford. Community and Compass, as I mentioned, we're working with them as well. We're about to start constructing 3 homes. That was actually recently featured in local media. So what we're doing there is kind of creative. The city is acting as the owner and basically utilizing Community and Compass as the developer, because they've accessed some funds through the foundation to offer down payment assistance for folks. And in exchange for that, the city is keeping the folks that are eligible for those purchases at 80% or under AMI. So that was the big challenge we're having, right? So if you have folks that are these Alice families, how do we get them to own or occupy anything? They need help with their credit. They don't have money for a down payment. They're working 40 hours a week, sometimes more, and they're like barely getting by. And so what we determined was the city can utilize our federal home dollars to finance a portion of it. Community and Compass is financing the other portion. So they're effectively paying the city to let them build houses for us. And that's through some foundation funds that they have, that they hold. And then they're also using a different foundation fund to do up to, I think it's up to $35,000 in down payment assistance per home. So even with the city taking losses on construction, which we're going to get back through what's called a brownfield TIF or tax increment financing district, which is what we're doing with basically all these homes, either us or the developer benefits depending on the arrangement. So we're going to get back some of our losses, like, you know, our realty fees, cost of sale, that kind of stuff. But we're still going to throttle the sale prices back to about 165. But then each lender or each owner occupier will get up to $35,000 in down payment assistance. So we're effectively able to sell new construction homes at $130,000, which a family making, you know, 80% of the AMI can conceivably handle the mortgage payments on, because it's going to be equivalent to about what they're paying in rent right now. So with insurance and PMI. So that's kind of what we're working on.
How does someone get involved in that program to be able to purchase one of those homes?
Like how does somebody who's interested in owning?
Jake, this is Virginia. I'm on the phone.
Hi, Virginia.
I'm on the call. Hi.
Hi, Virginia.
So I can answer that question.
Perfect.
We are currently accepting inquiries. Kimmy is the person that people would contact to begin with. In very short order, we'll have an application on our website that people can go into. We're looking at people that need to probably have a credit score right around 625. We're going to really look into it and see if that's high enough. And then what we'll do is we'll work with them to increase their credit score so that they can get a better mortgage. And then also the down payment assistance. I don't know if some of you have seen, Mary Jameson was our realtor for many years. And whenever we would sell a home, she would donate her commission back to us. So we are using that commission and then the foundation dollars. And then we also got a grant from Fifth Third a couple years ago that we can add into that. So that we can offer some significant down payment assistance so that someone at 80% AMI can afford one of these new homes. So we'd like to get working with some of the families right now. We're getting ready to order the 3 units. And so, you know, by the end of summer, we're hoping to be able to actually finish them up and sell them by the end of the summer. So we'd like to get working with the family as soon as possible if they're interested in purchasing it. So the income limit is someone below 80% of the area median income. So right around $45,000 for a family of 4. In those income limits will be on our website.
When it was featured on Wood TV8, I actually put my email as the contact email, and I got to tell you, I really wish I hadn't done that. So, I ended up.
Are you forwarding them to Kimi?
Yeah, I did. I put together a spreadsheet, and you know, I vetted some people myself just to see, because there were folks that, you know, I knew were going to be below. They kind of sent me their stats, and so them I just let them know, like, you know, sorry, but contact Community Encompass for other resources. But yeah, you're not going to be eligible. But
thank you.
Folks that I thought were, it was about 26 potential applicants, and I sent those over to Kimi. So yeah. Next time I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, and that's why we're going to do a pre-app online, so that we'll weed out people that don't have a high enough credit score, because it got to be mortgageable. And then at this point, but our goal is to get them a good mortgage so that they don't pay as much interest, and then to make it more affordable. And so people that within the 6 months can really, with some work, increase their credit score significantly. That's a target. So that because our down payment assistance fund, I get to write the grants for it, right? And once it's gone, it's not like some of our other funds, we don't get that back. So we want to stretch it as far as we can and give me time to continue to raise funds for that. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yep. So that's a partnership that we've got going on. So these 3 sites are really kind of our pilot. Once we prove concept, we're going to explore funding sources to kind of expand beyond that. So that kind of wraps up the single family stuff. I'll really quickly run through some of the multifamily downtown, just because that stuff's always interesting. People are fascinated.
Real quick before you do that, I did have one question on your last conversation. You said that we have a 10,000 person shortage from where it was in the past, and so you're trying to infill all of that. Mm-hmm. Economically and demographically, where are those 10,000 people coming from? Because right now we have a shortage. We have a fake shortage due to COVID, but as that comes back, how are we getting 10,000 people to move to Muskegon and then
Yeah.
go?
So over the course of time, I think it's going to be, that's not going to be our challenge. Our challenge is going to be where we put them. So with, even with like the upward pressure on housing prices over the course of the last couple of years, you're finally starting to see, you know, units in some of these core neighborhoods of the city of Muskegon go for, you know, in some cases 3 times what they were, what they would have sold for, you know, in the past 6 years. They're still cheaper than what you can get just about everywhere, and even with some rehab, you know, are still an excellent deal. So the challenge we're going to run into is, you know, what people are buying. Are they going to come in and turn over the existing units? Are we going to have? Are you going to see landlords selling their portfolio because the prices are so high right now? And you know, turning their investments into other stuff like that next step commercial housing style, like I was just talking about with Rebel School. Are you going to see folks, you know, build and hold, or you know, buy and hold, and then just continue to increase rents and to, you know, try to find that right balance where they're still attracting tenants? And then, you know, that's combined with new construction housing units, which again, we're trying to be pretty aggressive about how many we bring online. Now, how we get them here, I think, is significant investment in changing the city's image, which has been quite successful. Actually, just today, I had somebody send me an article with an entity called Thrillist, which is a free media company that is candidly like clickbait. It puts together like lists of different vacation destinations and, you know, adventure, all that kind of stuff. But Muskegon was actually listed in one of their top 10 small cities, small urban areas to visit for a vacation, like a long weekend. So we're already kind of successful in changing our image, because the types of lists we used to make were like top 10 most dangerous cities in Michigan and like places like, you know, things like that. Um, so I think over the course of time, like with marketing and obvious increases in, you know, the available amenities for the public, better parks and rec, better entertainment value, better restaurants and nightlife, which is already happening. This is becoming a more desirable community to live in. So over the course of time, the big challenge we have is how do we invite those people to come and make investments and set up shop here while simultaneously not displacing or pushing out the folks that have been here already? And that's that big gentrification question that cities are still, every city is working on, that's experiencing growth, and that's part of my department's task, is to figure that out. Does that answer your question? I'm sorry, a long answer to a short question, which is sort of my MO. But
No, that's been the big thing, because I know there's been a lot of concern about where all these people are supposed to be coming from. And I know I listened to a speech by Paul Isley saying that they're saying basically the same thing, that they're noticing that even though we are artificially constrained right now due to COVID, there's a demographic shift going on, and the demographics should hold out, and there's going to be plenty of people to buy houses. So
yeah,
I just wanted to get your guys' opinion on that.
Yeah, this market will continue to stay like inflated for quite a while, and I think like you're not going to see inventory recover this coming year. I think it's going to take at least another full year. You know, it's interesting. So part of my job is tracking economic indicators, and one of the only things that stayed consistently high and valuable and a bright spot in the economy during the COVID shutdowns, the various shutdowns state by state across the country, the biggest thing, the most consistent like bellwether was new housing starts. New housing starts never faltered for a second. Even when banks put a moratorium on all commercial lending, they like started calling notes on stuff. They never stopped lending for construction, for residential construction. So that's the one spot in the economy that everybody seems to agree is a strong play. And the reason is like a shortage of stock. So like just a general shortage of housing stock. And that's because people are kind of changing the way they're being housed. People are taking a look at small urban a little bit more than they ever used to, which is the category we fall into. You know, this used to be a place where folks would generally try to talk about like probably leaving, right? So, you know, and that's how like what we call bedroom communities have come about and become successful. And, you know, Muskegon has some of those neighbors like Norton Shores and places like that. And that's all great. That's you know, there's housing environment for everybody. But what you're seeing is because there's this shortage of stock, it's leading to upward pressure in markets like ours. Because,
yeah, I wanted to say our neighbor, Jake, I have a neighbor that moved in last summer during COVID. They came from out of state and they just researched different communities. They liked the amenities and the atmosphere and the housing prices. And they purchased a house. I think they work remotely. And so I think I've been seeing more and more of that. So I don't think it isn't something that's just going to happen in the future, but it's happening now that people are moving into at least my neighborhood from out of state
Yeah,
because Muskegon's a desirable place to live.
yeah, I'm really interested to see what happens with these next census numbers. Like, um, I want to see if we actually have a net gain in city population. I think we might. If I were to place a bet, it would be on that. But I will say, this is going to be a continued investment that the city makes. So we partner with, a publication called Livability Magazine. You may have seen that distributed around the community. That's a national publication that we put out editions. It's an entire magazine devoted to Muskegon County, and the city of Muskegon makes significant investments in that, which is also an online advertising campaign. The city has actually taken over the Watch Muskegon campaign, administration of that marketing campaign. It was formerly at the chamber, it's now here. And now the city's starting to take a more direct role in other stuff. So we've actually taken on, we already were working the Taste of Muskegon, and now we're also taking on the art festival. So there's significant arts and entertainment investments the city is making in addition to brick and mortar. So any other questions before I jump into the big projects, the big news stuff? Okay. So, some of my projects that I'm working on right now, the first and foremost one that I'll highlight because it's this big ugly thing downtown is the former Ameribank building at 881st Street. So I always call it the skeleton building, and everybody knows what I'm talking about. It's on Clay right behind High Point Flats. That building, we are in our final negotiations on a purchase and development agreement from Ferguson Development, who is partnered with a local attorney here, Brianna Scott, who I'm sure many of you know. They will actually be transitioning that into a multi-phase development, the first of which will be a 10-story tower where the existing 5-story structure lives. So there's been extensive, about $400,000 worth of geotechnical testing and architecture and all kinds of other stuff that has determined that original building was built to be expanded to 8 stories. So the plan is to actually take that to 10, with 2 of those stories at the top being stick built, similar to some of the development models that they're doing in Grand Rapids to try to keep housing affordable because they have a very serious housing crisis going on. So that will eventually be the tallest building downtown, which is cool. Something that's cool as well is the second phase will include a liner building along Clay. So directly across from the St. Mary's Rectory and Hennessy's building, there will be an additional 4-story apartment complex that will hold an additional 32 units. And behind that, in the existing city parking lot, there will be a 3 or 4-story parking structure that will accompany that development and also serve some parking spaces for High Point Flats. So that will and those will all be premium market rate. So those will be folks that are trying to approach, and that'll be all different types though. So you'll have everything from studio up to some a few nice penthouse suites in there that are going to be in the 3-bedroom neighborhood. So but the overall aggregate they're looking for is anywhere from $1.85 to $2 a square foot in rent. So that'll be a higher end apartment complex. The Leonard is under construction right now, as everybody's seen. That's going to be 22 units is what they settled on. They have additional commercial that they kind of added in towards the end there. It'll include a credit union, a spot for either retail or a restaurant, and then 22 apartments. Again, those are going to be somewhere between $1.70 and $2 a square foot. So pretty high end price points. Let's see here. Lakeview Loft Phase 2, they actually have some state appropriations from MEDC. But we're working through their final underwriting through PNC Bank. That's just been held up for COVID mostly. There's been other logistical struggles, but it's hard to build a 6-story building during COVID. I can tell you that. That's been one of the hardest projects I've worked on in recent years. But we do see the light at the end of the tunnel. I anticipate you'll see construction start in 2021 on Lakeview Loft Phase 2. For those of you that aren't familiar, it's basically going to be an identical sister building to the 6-story that's built right across from Unruly Brewing, which is Lakeview Lofts. Where Boomtown Market is. So it'll basically have a twin, and it'll be connected on 2 separate floors with a walkway. And that'll be an additional 35 apartments. There's 20 apartments in phase 1. There'll be 35 units in phase 2. Let's see here. I'm working. Some of you may know that shortly after I got here, we finalized the purchase of a former prison property. It was Lakeshore Correctional Facility. We purchased that through a state grant, and then demolished that site, cleaned it up. It's now 63 acres of developable industrial property in the industrial park. And we are working on a request for proposals to get that out. I also have an interested end user from another county that I'm talking to right now. I anticipate putting that RFP on the agenda for next week's commission meeting. So you'll see. And what we're going to do, the goal that I've been working on this RFP for like 6 months, and I keep tinkering with it because it's such a big, yeah, it's such a big site. I really don't want to only tie ourselves to one big, quote unquote whale of an end user, when we could just as easily have 5 or 6 local investors that want to build spec buildings or expansions to their company and accommodate everybody. So it's taken time to really put it together in such a way where we can potentially accommodate multiple respondents to that RFP. You'll also notice that 1021 Jefferson, so that's right across the street on Apple from City Hall. It's the building under construction right now. That is additional workforce housing. We're excited to see that. That'll be an additional, I think, 52 units maybe that's going to go online. That should be online here by the fall. And then Samaritas, which is another live tech developer, they were awarded in this last round from MISTA for a senior living complex over on Spring Street, right, kind of kitty corner from Whit Buick. So you'll see another apartment complex going up right there. And then one of the big projects that I'm also working on is Harbor 31. So Harbor 31 Business Park, for those of you that aren't familiar with that name, is where Parmenter Law's building is, like right there on the lake, sort of all that property. For years and years, people have, said that they wanted to try to put a casino there. We finally kind of moved them off of that. And the way we did that is right after I got here, I started poking around and we noticed that the existing LLC, not the new LLC, but the existing LLC had about like $800,000 in back property taxes. And, some of that was more than 2 years delinquent. So just to kind of like, rattle the cage a little bit and get them talking to us, I put a resolution on the agenda to basically like condemn them in the treasurer's office for not foreclosing these properties and like, what's the deal here? And then like lo and behold, the Friday before that meeting, they paid like $800,000 in back property taxes. So we took that off, and then sure enough, we had a call like the following week, and one of the partners is buying out the other partners with some new investors. And that's going quite well. That's going to be a multi-phase development that will include a 130 unit apartment complex, 40 single family homes, a multi-phase senior living facility that'll have over 100 units, and a commercial dry dock marina, like in-out facility marina that will also feature, I think it's a Bud's Boat Sales. It's like one of the large ones from Florida that'll have a boat dealership there. So working on that right now to develop that front on the lakeshore as well. Let me get my light back on.
So speaking of that, is there a plan or zoning plan or anything to create some sort of a touristy trap, lakeside, Grand Haven boardwalk-ish thing for Muskegon that is not, and that's closer to downtown instead of all the way out at Pier Marquette?
Yeah, there will be a lot of public access at Harbor 31. So it's going to tie into the existing bike trail along Seaway Drive, and it'll have non-motorized paths that actually go all the way up to the lakefront, and it'll feature an amphitheater, some fishing pier, and then some scenic overlooks and different things like that. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of opportunity for increased access to the lake. We're also in very early stages. I don't know, some of you are familiar with a property we refer to as like the Kirksey property, which was the former Anaconda Wire, and some other industrial users. It's basically, where Fricano's is on lower Western at Western and Franklin. It's everything at the dead end of Western Avenue. That's currently like vacant industrial and kind of wood space. So that's got a purchase agreement in place with a private developer who is going to be targeting an additional marina facility there, which would be about 240 slips, I think, 235 or 240 slips. As well as condominiumized housing, some multifamily condos, and then some commercial as well. So additional potential retail and restaurant space. So that would effectively be an additional new district to the downtown that we call like Lower Western, which kind of rounds me out. I don't want to take up too much of your time. I've got a list here that I'm looking at, and we've got some more stuff on it. But the last thing I'll mention is we're also making better progress with the ownership of the watermark than we have in many years at this point. So we've worked out an agreement with the watermark. They were recently rezoned to accommodate cannabis facilities because they have a partner that is an equity investor, which is one of the largest medical marijuana production companies in the world. It's called Tikkun Olam. They're based in Israel. One of their principals was on some boards in New York City with the owner of the watermark, and they got to talking, and He mentioned that Muskegon was kind of at the forefront in West Michigan in that industry. And so one of the buildings, a lot of people think that entire 600,000 square feet is going to be turned into this marijuana production facility. That's inaccurate. One of the buildings, 2 floors of the 5 floors in one of the buildings will be Tikkun Olam, and then the remaining roughly 400,000 square feet will be additional new condominiumized housing, apartments, and some commercial. So I think in the next 4 years or so, we're going to see that build out. And then right across from there, you have waterfront condos being built at Hartshorn called Hartshorn Village. The first 3 of those are under construction right now. So a lot of stuff going on. That's some of it. I think it'd probably be better if I use my remaining time for questions, though.
All right, let's open up for questions.
Jake, is there anything going on at the old Sappy property?
Yes, there's a lot going on over there. So, right now, the same group here, Muskegon, still owns it. The folks that kind of went through the planning process with the community and demolished the plant with Sappy. As of now, they're still working on environmental remediation. So this is kind of a crazy statistic. Every single day, I think the number is 734,000 gallons of groundwater is pumped out of that site into the sewer to go to the county sewer treatment facility. So almost 750,000 gallons of water every day is pumped out of the water table right there to clean and recycle the water table. So that process continues. You don't see it because it's below ground, but that's what's going on there. And then currently the bigger plan right now is for a remodel and rehabilitation and then some investment of single family homes at the golf club, the country club. So that's kind of be the first phase as a catalyst development. I think they plan to build up to 100 homes at the Muskegon Country Club site and also remove the existing clubhouse restaurant facility and build a different one in a different spot. So that's kind of phase 1 of Windward Point. That's the name of the Sappy site. And then, they're still working with developers. We had some like household name style folks taking a look at Windward Point pre-COVID. And I have a feel, and they're still in that conversation, but again, a lot of that large scale development has been put on hold because people are waiting to see what gains liabilities they're going to have and things of that nature. So,
Okay.
but yeah, I anticipate that'll be 10 years of consistent development, I'm guessing. And it's going to be mostly housing. It'll probably be close to 700 new housing units. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Jake, how do you, I'm going through it right now, working with Mike on a site on Campbell Field, but
Yeah.
You say you want more multifamily. And the biggest headache that I've had for the last 2 weeks is how do you get these things zoned for multifamily or row houses when the neighborhood associations continue to fight you and the city commission is going to always pretty much end up in a vote of 4-3. So how does this, the city commission has not been welcoming for multifamily in these neighborhoods unless pretty much it's downtown.
So yeah, I think that's one of the challenges that we're going to run into as we try to accommodate different housing styles and different price points for people as we move out from Nelson, like I said. So I haven't seen anybody specifically get rejected yet, but maybe an example that I'm not thinking of right now. But I think Mike is going to be your best option there and your best resource because he's going to be very pragmatic with you and tell you like, it's going to be a tough sell here, or we can get this done. But our planning department, specifically Mike, and also a guy named Jamie Pesh. I don't know if you've worked with Jamie yet. Jamie's actually an architect by trade, and so we'll actually sit down with folks and help them draw things up in ways that we think can accommodate zoning or can be more amenable to a rezoning. And that's part of our job. If you're seeing community resistance, then we need to hold some meetings with those community members and see why, and maybe try to listen to them and maybe educate each other. Like, because I have never been to a neighborhood meeting where I didn't learn something from the folks that come. But then I've usually been able to impart something to them as well. So I think that's a process as you scale to that construction phase of development. You're going to find that everywhere. And it's probably not, you said outside of downtown, but really downtown gets that too. Every time we have a building, it's never done with the first phase. I can tell you that much. And that's, as an example, originally 881st Street was supposed to have 2 stories of commercial, and it wasn't supposed to have a 4-story liner building or a parking structure. So these things just kind of, evolve, the best advice I can give you is don't get discouraged by that. Those people live and are invested in that neighborhood, and they are going to have an opinion. And part of being that next scale of developer is hearing that and seeing if you can find creative ways to make some accommodations or educate them as to why you think that your way is the best way, and see if they go along with it. And then at the end of the day, as you mentioned, it's up to the commission to vote. And I haven't seen that many 4-3 votes at this commission. Quite frankly, I've managed 3 cities, and I wouldn't say that this commission does any more 4-3 votes than any other I've been in. So, like, and when you're a growing community, you're going to get more contentious debate. That's just kind of the way it is. I know I'm not trying to be evasive. I'm just trying to let you know, like, you got to be ready.
Yeah.
For that stuff.
Yeah, well, and Mike said it just been voted down twice, but in other neighborhoods in Campbell, he said it's not very active. So pay the $500 and go for it. But I mean, how many times do you pay $500 to hear the word no? So I mean, my application's in. They got to notify everybody. I don't know if you know where the site's at or not, but
Yeah, I do.
yeah. So, but that's the biggest thing is, I'd like to. I mean, I have blueprints for row homes and different things. And unfortunately, it's just you're constantly hit with, well, the neighborhood doesn't want that, and I don't know what else to do.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And so, like, also, I think it's important to understand, like, the priorities of each neighborhood are different. So
I was just,
go ahead, Virginia.
I was talking with another developer last week also, and I think I'm the vice president of the Nelson Neighborhood Association, and I work for Community Compass, who develops in that neighborhood, and I live in Nelson neighborhood. So there's a lot of reasons why I engage there, but I would encourage you as a property owner in a neighborhood, come to be a member of the neighborhood association, get to know the neighbors, and understand where they're coming from. And I guarantee when it's time to do development, you're going to have friends and relationships in those neighborhood associations that can advocate for you, and you can get a lot more done. So I think that's having lived in Muskegon for 10 years, going on 11, it's just really important to the neighbors there to feel like you're one of us and that you have their best interests, and they don't want to be done to, and they don't want to be shut out. But if you're one of us, then it's going to, not to say that Community Compass hasn't had their challenges, but I really feel like it really makes a difference when you're in the neighborhood association. So join them. If you want to develop in McLaughlin neighborhood, join the neighborhood association, help educate the residents about the benefits of multifamily housing. Because right now they think you're coming in, you're just trying to get rich on their neighborhood.
And just to kind of add to that, you mentioned, I think what you were referencing, you said Mike had one get told no. Recently, we tried to expand specifically the form-based code. And just without getting in the weeds, because that's pretty technical, the form-based code is a provision of our zoning. Some of you probably know it, some of you don't, where like form-based code is a provision of zoning that basically says, like, we care more about the aesthetic than the use. And so zoning traditionally is based on land use, right? So this is residential, this is commercial, this is industrial. So form-based code is good for like downtowns or like transition neighborhoods between commercial and residential districts that say, like, we want you to put good production value and make a nice aesthetic that stays with the vibrancy of the community, rather than focusing too narrowly on use. And then it has some things that go along with that. As an example, like downtown, a lot of like suburban communities will have like a parking minimum. You're going to build a McDonald's, okay, you need to put 100 spaces in, even though there's never going to be 100 people at a McDonald's. So that's called a parking minimum. Like, a lot of times you'll see stuff in form-based that'll actually have different rules, like parking maximums. So what Mike was referring to is we were trying to rezone, like, to change some zoning, and I believe it was Jackson Hill and a couple others, to like just generally put in form-based code, but there was not a specific development in mind. So that's I think what he was talking about, and there might be another one that I'm not familiar with, but
yeah, that's it. But the other part of the problem is when you go to these neighborhoods, and what I have planned and proposed is duplexes, but it has to be zone multifamily. So I think even if you told anybody that's on this call today that you're looking to build multifamily, first thing you think is 20 to 40 units, not a 2-unit duplex. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if the city can have another zoning classification to stress to people that it's not really multifamily. I mean, today I spent my day driving through the 31 lots that you have available in Marquette neighborhood, and I'm prepared to make an offer, I think, on 23 of them. But here's the thing: if they can't be duplexes, I don't want no part of it, you know, because you know how I feel about the single family rental market. But I just think when you're trying to educate people, using the word multifamily automatically seems like, oh man, they're going to build 40 units there, and it's going to be hodgepodge. It's going to be, you know, 6 stories tall. It's going to have parking underneath, and that's not the case, you know. So the duplexes, the triplexes, and the fourplexes, which all qualify for residential financing per se, are grouped into the multifamily code, maybe for the state or maybe for the city. So
some of it has to do with construction code requirements. So like land use zoning often reflects those. But one thing I'll tell you is, like, there's a term that you should learn if you're looking to get into that type of market. And you might already know it, but it's called missing middle housing. So missing middle basically means, okay, you've got a single family home, you know, 2-stall attached garage, suburban, what everybody thinks of when they think of a suburban home that everybody's building. And then you've got what you just described, a 40-unit apartment complex that's 4 stories and has a small parking area attached to it. The missing middle is what we basically, the term that planning and zoning people use and economic developers use for everything in between, which is exactly what you're talking about. So, the Phoenix that Community Encompass bill, I think it's either 4 or 6 units in it. So that's an example of missing middle housing. Like a duplex is an example of missing middle housing, townhomes, quadplexes, all that kind of stuff. And so like that, and that's exactly what I mean about going to neighborhood meetings with developers and trying to educate folks. Like, this is what cities are doing to try to accommodate this stuff and to make this viable, because the challenge we've had with urban disinvestment over time is that a developer can't turn around, and especially with construction costs being what they are right now at record highs, you can't build a single family home and sell it in the city of Muskegon and make a ton of money, like, with rare exception. I mean, there's your Glensides and Lakeside and Bluffton's, but if you try to go to in those lots in Marquette, you're going to spend $200,000 building a single family home, and you're going to sell it for 180. And that's why the city's building them, because we can do that. We can get our money back through tax capture, but you can't, not as easily anyway. And why would you? Just to break even. You're in business to make money, where we're not. So that's really like learning that missing middle terminology and being able to effectively explain that to people and say, like, listen, I want to build and be part of this community and make investment here and bring new blood into this community while respecting what's already here. But I can't do it building single family homes. I just can't. There's no money to be made. Nobody's going to do it. This is going to be an empty lot. And like, having those brass tacks conversations has been something we've been doing for the last year. And I think you're right. It's hard to tell people stuff that doesn't fit with their feeling about how things should be, right? And that goes both ways. So I think that's the conversation that needs to be had. And it is really easy to go to random township, random county, Michigan, where the population is 10,000 people, and buy 20 acres from a farmer and get your septic field permit and your well drilling permit and build a subdivision, because you can go out there and you can bang out homes for $250 a piece and sell them for $325. So like, it's a different market, and it's a different kind of development, and it's just a learning curve. But that's why we're here, is to help you with that. We quote unquote know what we're doing. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's just,
and I'm happy to sit in on those calls with you. And Mike knows his stuff. I'm not going to be able to tell you anything about zoning that Mike doesn't already know. But I mean, from the economic development side, I'm happy to sit in on those calls. We partner up all the time.
Yeah, I just literally last week I sat down with him and Jamie and we put a plan together, and I don't know. I think it goes to planning commission first, and then it's going to go to the city commission. I think it's the third or the last meeting in March. I think it goes in front of the commission. So I mean, we'll see. The same development I know I can put in Fruitport with no questions asked. So we'll see how it goes. But there's great incentives, and I've told these guys throughout numerous meetings, there's great incentives in what the city's willing to give somebody right now. I mean, it really, from a bottom line standpoint, makes a lot of sense. I mean, they're doing just about everything for you, with the exception of building the structure. I mean, it's quite interesting what I've learned over the last 30 days.
It's a good deal for everybody. It's a question of math, quite frankly. Like, if we didn't have to do that, we wouldn't, right? Like, I mean, like you said, you can go to Fruitport they're going to make it really easy for you, but they're not going to give you any tax incentives because you don't need them.
Yeah,
And
no,
you
they're
don't.
not. Yeah, and they're
Like,
not
and so
gonna.
they're like, yeah, man, whatever, don't build it here, someone else will. Like, but we don't have that luxury because our lots are dispersed. They're in a grid block. They're 50 by 125. It's not that cookie cutter stereotype of what new housing starts are right now. And
Yeah.
that's what cities have to do. We have to get innovative to compete, especially in Michigan. But that's a whole other presentation about why it's hard to run a city in Michigan.
Jake, I think that too, that we need to remember we're part of a larger association. And unfortunately, the people that show up to the city council members against projects are the people that are against them, and they are the very small minority. So as an association, we could support one another. If you're going before the city council with a proposal, let us all know, and I'll show up and let our voice be heard, because the city is only hearing, if they're only hearing those against it, then that's what they think people are against it. But if people show up in support of it, then the city can fall back on, hey, there's a lot of people that support it, and it's a lot easier for them to say yes.
I understand.
Any other questions? Anything else anybody wants to discuss?
I got a quick question with your insight on Muskegon Heights there. Do you ever foresee that point of sale inspection going away? And then somebody hypothesized, which I think would be awesome, but I don't think it'll ever happen, like the Heights being absorbed by the city, Norton Shores, that's surrounding municipalities, just because the Heights is in my opinion, they don't run things very well, I guess. So just a little word there.
Sure. Yeah. I'm not gonna comment too much on a place I don't work, right? So, I have experience there. When I was the manager there, we were exploring different strategies for inspections, like multi-year rental inspections, maybe eliminating the point of sale in exchange for other system. But you have to, and I think I gave this exact same spiel when I presented when I was still the manager in the Heights. And I think it was actually Stephen Benedict that asked me the question. It sounds like maybe that point of sale inspection hasn't gone anywhere. But it was there for a reason, because there was a serious issue with like predatory property investors there and I said this exact same speech before. I'm not going to go through it in detail, but there were a lot of people really, really taking advantage of the system, knowing that the Heights was under resourced and couldn't necessarily police all these things the way that it would want to. So as to that, I can't speak as to whether or not they would ever get rid of that. I believe their new city manager's name is Troy Bell, and his email address is tbell@cityofmuskegonheights.org. That's a fair question to ask him, because he runs that department. So, and I wouldn't want to supersede his authority there. As to the question about them being absorbed into other municipalities, no, that won't ever happen. That's a considerable rumor that has been around since at least the 70s. And so, and it's both internal and external. A lot of people don't understand that, like these rumors, stereotypes, these iterations of different stories about Muskegon Heights definitely cut both ways. So people in Muskegon Heights, which is like 11,000 people, they feel a certain way about each one of those stories as well. And so just as much as there are folks in Norton Shores like, God, Norton Shores should just take this place over. Like, I have all these grievances. There are folks in the Heights that are like, this predatory, predominantly white, affluent community is trying to take my community from me. And that's why sometimes you see the reaction there to be very insular and very careful. It's because there is this real, there's this real anxiety about that. And so it's interesting, but it'll never happen. Michigan is a home rule state. There's a Home Rule Cities Act, which basically means like there's no way for one city to be annexed by another city without a city dissolving, and that's exceedingly rare. Like, I mean, cities have been in far worse plights than any municipality in Muskegon County has ever been, and they're still here today. It's just not going to happen. So the best thing we can do to help Muskegon Heights is find ways to get involved and empower Muskegon Heights from within.
Piggybacking on that question, as the economic development guy, how long do you see before the rising tides of the rest of Muskegon are able to actually infiltrate into the Heights?
Yeah, so a big problem there, and this is a good-hearted jab at all of you. A big problem there lies with you guys. And so what I mean by that is the challenge comes with average sale prices of residential real estate in Muskegon Heights. So while I was there, we were seeing some success. So when I got there in 2016, the average sale price for a home was something like $33,000. So it was shockingly low. The average taxable value there was $12,500 for a house. So, like, that's shockingly low. I mean, ridiculously low. And that's, people are like, man, they don't do anything right. The roads are bad. The inspections department's understaffed. I can't get this. I can't get that. That's why. That's it right there. Because folks over the course of decades have devalued the property there, like to the point where it's an investor's paradise, but it's really difficult for a local government to run on $12,500 of property value per residential lot. So, that's the challenge, is tax base. Now, over the last several years, 3 or 4 years at least, the city of Muskegon has been at the top of the list as far as increases in taxable values as a percentage. So that means new stuff coming online, new value coming online. Muskegon Heights, for that same period of time, has been at or near the bottom, with an average basically at inflation, like 2% a year. So, and the problem with that is it doesn't cost the Heights any less to buy a police car. It doesn't cost the Heights any less to buy a fire hydrant. In order to get good staff, they have to pay at least some semblance of what other places are paying. So over the course of time, it can't be this rising tides lift all boats mentality. It took really, really special circumstances to get Muskegon Heights into that devalued condition. It's likely going to take very special circumstances to get them out of that devalued condition. Does that make sense? That's again a long
So a long time is what you're saying.
Well, it depends. I think it depends on how the investments move. So when I was there, we were working on a 2020, we were basically going to rebuild a city block with 20 new homes, and at the site of the Glendale School on Summit. I don't know exactly what happened. The school got removed, and we were partnering with the state of Michigan through a brownfield TIF. So we were going to be able to like offer new homes for $90,000. So like, yeah, that's a neighborhood that is here in Muskegon County is like considered questionable or quote unquote dangerous. That's statistically inaccurate, but that's a whole nother presentation. But for the folks that were like being priced out of Grand Rapids and Metro Grand Rapids, who are making 45, 50 grand a year and can't afford an apartment or can't afford a house, they would look at owning a home there. And we did market studies to determine that. We knew that people would buy those homes. And there was pretty good existing folks that wanted to come back to Muskegon Heights. So there is a huge amount of legacy population that has left the city either for lack of quality housing stock or for commuter distance, things like that, that want to be back in that city. So there is investment potential there. The problem that arises is the big investor guys, they're looking at all kinds of data sets that are never going to allow them to build in Muskegon Heights because they're not going to deviate from their data sets. The other problem is the smaller guys are scared of it. They, quite frankly, whether they're scared of the stereotypes about the neighborhoods, whether they're scared of working with that local government, or whether they just are, there's too many better places, quote unquote, to put my money. That's the challenge that we were running into when I was there. That being said, we were meeting some success. I had folks taking a look at our former wastewater treatment facility near the cemetery to potentially put housing in there. Again, we were going to put 20 homes in that should have been built in 2019 or 2020, one of the two, at least some of them. So there is potential there. There's absolutely investment potential. But again, the challenge comes with the fact that the average sale price in homes there is extremely limited. I mean, high quality homes. My wife and I, when I was there, we were looking at buying a home that if I picked it up and put it in Norton Shores would be like a $350,000 house, probably more like 450 today, given how inflated things are. And it was for sale for like 189. And it's probably one of the nicest houses in the city limits. That's a challenge. It's a huge challenge.
Jake, one more question. Just out of curiosity, I'm not interested. I don't think anybody here is, but has there been any estimates on the Frebel School, what it would take?
I don't think anybody's quite gotten that far. We've had some pretty good heavy hitters go through it. One of the challenges that we're running into is, and this is true for any institutional building, right? It's really built to be what it is. So, when I was in the Heights, we were just finishing up the Roosevelt School apartments over there. And they did change that floor plan with a ton of internal stud work and a ton of interior walls. They did change the floor plan. but they also had to put an addition on it to make it cash flow. So like that's the challenge that we run into with these school buildings is they're built really, really well and they're built to be exactly what they are. So a price point, I mean, you're going to be well into the millions of dollars, candidly. I would bet 10 to $15 million to make it a nice market rate 50 unit apartment complex. But to build 50 units, you got to spend 18 to $20 million. So
Wow.
in the same building style, like the same, multi-story equivalent. Um, so that's kind of where that market is. And again, that just shows the sheer scale of development. You've got guys that are, and I talk to these guys and I'm happy for them that are excited because they're building their first 4 unit. Like, they're building a quadplex and they've been a property investor for a while and they've either done like cash out mortgages or they've sold a portion of their portfolio, whatever the case may be. And then you've got guys that did all that, and I'm thinking of specific people right now. They've done all that, and then they are now transitioning where they want to start getting into that commercialized stuff. And it's different scales of development. No one is better or worse. We like it all. Anything else for me? I didn't mean to take up so much of your guys' evening.
Oh no, we'll keep talk your ear off. I'm actually surprised that you're getting such softballs.
Yeah, no, this wasn't that bad. I was like, when I saw that Scooter was on here, I was like, all right, what's he got for me tonight? But that wasn't bad at all.
As soon as you mentioned the Percano, or not Percanos, but the Watermark building, I was like, oh man. Yeah.
So I do have a question when it pertains to the development of the job growth and different things like that. Are there any projections? I'm sure the city's obviously always looking forward to estimated job growth, demographic growth, population growth. Because obviously with everything that's going on, it's awesome to see new homes built. I have seen a few industrial sites develop, different things like that, but is everything outpaced? Are we outpacing on the building? Are we getting enough inroads coming in? Do we have anything based off? I know there's a little bit of data based on MDOT. Anything to kind of give us a little clarity on what that's looking like?
Yeah, I'm going to work in pre-COVID reality because those are the best numbers I've got. And because we don't know what post-COVID reality is going to look like, odds are it's going to look pretty similar. By the end of 22, we should look pretty similar to what we looked like in the summer of 19, which was a great year. And 2020 was looking to be even better. So, we are going to recover. It's going to take a couple of years. But yeah, so long story short, one of the primary things I was working on before COVID hit was how am I going to import labor? Because, and this was something that I found problematic is our county's industrial base was the last in the region to put upward pressure on their wages. So to the point where like me as both a city manager and an economic developer, I'd have guys being like, oh, I can't, I gotta hire 4 to keep 1 and can't get anybody to work. And I would ask them like, okay, well, what's your average wage rate and so on. And I just have to tell them like, yeah, you got to pay more, man. I just talked to so and they're paying $1.50 more an hour, like, and they're doing signing bonuses and they're direct hiring. They're not temping. So like, finally we were seeing some upward pressure on those wages, which is good for the entire economy, right? Because those healthcare and manufacturing jobs, we all know those drive our local economy. Those are the folks that have disposable income, that go to the restaurants, stay in the hotels, buy the presents at Target, that drive the rest of the service economy. So we were seeing really more, we had more available jobs than we could fill, which is why we were trying to import housing units and import labor and try to like accommodate that growth. I anticipate we'll get back to that. I know at any given point in Muskegon County at large, I can't get city specific data yet. I'm working on trying to do that. We were looking at somewhere around 4,400 open positions. And so that's pretty good considering the fact that there's 173,000 people in the entire county, and considering the fact that roughly just over half of or just under half, about 44% of the city's or of the county's workforce leaves the county limits every day to go to work. And we import almost an equal number. So it's interesting. Like we're kind of a weird county because we're like the redheaded stepchild of the 3-county area, because like Kent and Ottawa County, the city of Grand Rapids is the fastest growing city in Michigan, and Kent County is one of the biggest counties, and then Ottawa County is the fastest growing county in Michigan. So You know, we're by orders of magnitude the smaller of those three markets, but we're in this job market where people can easily commute to these other places. So we're in this sort of ecosystem where people leave our county every day to go to work, but they also come in from those two counties to go to work. So, you know, it's really difficult to speak to like, yeah, I think we're going to create 2,000 jobs in the city limits in the next 3 years, because creating jobs is relative. If 100 jobs are created in Norton Shores, that benefits my city. So because it's new options for people to buy, and I know my housing's cheaper. So, you know, it's a difficult question, but to put it in perspective, I think by the end of 22, we'll be in a very, very positive job trajectory, and we'll be in a very positive housing unit trajectory. Does that make sense?
Now, the last few years that Paul Isley has spoken about this subject, he's mentioned that job travel and that commute has all been along 31 and has not been along 96.
Isn't that weird?
Have we seen any shift in that?
So I'm gonna push back on what you said a little bit. So,
Okay.
you know, you're speaking in absolutes, and that's only a SIF does that.
Well, yeah, I'm just saying what from what the economist said. I mean,
yeah. So
statistically speaking,
yeah,
there's someone that goes.
A majority of people from Muskegon County use 31 and not 96, and that was surprising. And it's been that way for a long time. But some of that's true for both outbound and inbound traffic. But about 1 in 3 commuters still use 96, going both directions. So that is statistically substantial. And so, you know, we're seeing actually a lot. Ottawa County draws a huge amount of our workforce. You know, what's crazy is I have a lot of like firsthand anecdotal connections to Muskegon Heights, and there's a ton of people in Muskegon Heights that drive to like Holland for work. They work at Tyson, they work at the paint company, Sherwin-Williams, like, you know, they're working at the, or Magna Mirrors, like places like that. And they choose to go there because the wages are higher. It's worth it. And there's a huge community of like shuttle services that drive them down there, like the people from Muskegon Heights that work down there. So, you know, it's interesting, and I don't see that changing. You know, and then again, we're a huge job center for Oceana and Nuevo County. A lot of people from Oceana and Nuevo County drive here for work. You know, and I think that's the ecosystem that will continue is for the foreseeable future.
Jake, one more question, but two things. What's going on with the old McDonald's across from City Hall and then the old Huntington Bank building?
Good questions. So I just walked through the Huntington Bank building about 2 weeks ago with a local institutional investor. So the goal is for that investor to make an offer on that building. I can't say who it is yet because their board hasn't approved it or even heard the proposal. But their administrator is planning to recommend a purchase of that building. There's this guy who owns it. He's based in Massachusetts, and he bought it in like the 80s on a 1031 exchange. He's never been here. First thing he told me in a very heavy Massachusetts accent was he has no plans to visit Muskegon. Like, so I was like, okay, well, we'd love to have you, but that's fine. So yeah, like long story short, that one should transition to it's an institutional user. That's the best thing I can say. And then the McDonald's building is actually owned by a guy from Grand Rapids named Bill Bussey. He does commercial redevelopment. He actually in Roosevelt Park was the realtor who developed the Home Depot complex there, like that entire commercial area. So he's a realtor, commercial realtor. He owns it, plans to do a mixed use development there, smaller scale, probably 2 or 3 stories with a commercial kind of an office suite situation on the first floor and apartments on the second 2 floors, 1 or 2 floors. We do have a site plan in from him, but we helped him receive about a $500,000 grant from Eagle, the former DEQ, to clean that site up, because a lot of people don't know, way back in the day before that was McDonald's, it was a dry cleaners, and there's some ground contamination. So you'll see them tearing up parts of that parking lot this summer to put some groundwater reclamation infrastructure in there.
Can you disclose what they're going to do with the Fifth Third Bank building? I mean, I know who the buyer is, but I mean, yeah. Can you disclose what they're going to do with that big parcel?
I know that and I don't know that it's a secret, but I don't think it is. So long term, they plan to move Core Realty's offices to the bank building, so they can do something different and more, public facing on the Western Avenue office they've got. I don't know what they're going to do with the big parking lot. I don't know that they know that yet. We're still kind of working with them on it.
It just seems like a lot smaller building than where they're already at. but
Yeah, but I don't, it's a realty office. Most of them aren't in there most of the time. I mean, I've gone in there for other things, and it seems like there's like four people in there at any given time.
okay.
If we're unable to or work with you in the city or Roosevelt Park, are there other people that have similar jobs in Muskegon County, Norton Shores, that kind of stuff, that would help us find out what other services? I mean, you mentioned the grant writing, that kind of stuff that the different areas can help our investors work with. Or are you it?
Are you asking if there's like a me in Norton Shores?
Is there a you in Norton Shores? Is there a you in Muskegon County, or are you it? And then
Yeah, Muskegon County is usually going to refer you if it's in a city, they're going to refer you to that city. They do have some, but it's interest, but it's mostly industrial. There is some commercial frontage on Whitehall Road at the Business Park North site, and that would be Matt Farah, who's actually the Public Works Director for Muskegon County, but he's sort of a Matt of all trades. He's an intelligent guy, and he actually is a finance professor at Grand Valley as well. So he's a smart dude, and he definitely knows his stuff. I work with him pretty often. So he's good to reach out to if you're interested in something in a township. But there's a good chance that he's going to refer you to the countywide EDO, which used to be called Muskegon Area First and is now called Greater Muskegon Economic Development, or GMED. So, and Morgan Carroll she's the business development director over there. But I think if somebody came and said, "Hey, I want to build 20 houses in this tract in Dalton Township," they would help you. Like I gotta think they would. As to Norton Shores, there's a guy there who's the planner. His name's Ted Woodcock, and he's a sharp guy. I've known him for quite a while, and he doesn't do the economic development stuff as much. They actually have the EDO. They have Greater Muskegon Economic Development do all their tax incentives as like a contractor kind of thing. But Ted's a good planner, and he can work through a lot of that kind of stuff. So I think that's all the ones that I would know anyway. Yeah, Fruitport Township's going to use the EDO as well, the countywide EDO.
all right, last chance for questions, guys.
Hope I held your attention.
No, it's been amazing. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming. Just reminders, everyone else, we will be meeting here again, same place, same time. Let's see, April 5th. So put that on your calendars. And then I know, Jake, you were going to put your email address.
Oh yeah, let me do that real quick.
Into the chat. And then yeah, anyone else, any last questions or thoughts or anything you need to say to the group that maybe isn't directly related to what Jake just said?
Thank you, Jake.
For sure. Yeah, thanks for the good questions, everybody.
Thank you.
There it is, jake.eckeln@shorelincity.com. All right, thank you very much. I'm going to mute myself. You guys can talk among yourselves or slowly leave, but I'll stay in until it's over so that we don't no one gets kicked out.